MSNBC spoke to a protester on the streets of Baltimore, and let's just say that they got an education about the current state of affairs.
You come over here. What's your name?
Where?
From MSNBC. What's your name?
Danielle.
Danielle, do you live here in Baltimore City?
Yeah.
So why did you want to be out here right now?
I just came out here to represent my city and just to let everyone know that, you know, Baltimore isn't this bad place. We really do come together when we need to. And this is a time that we really need to come together and show support for our city, for the family of Freddie Gray, and to let America know that we do want justice.
When you say that you want justice, what type of message do you think it sends to the world when we're waiting on that justice and due process from the police investigation that we see residents last night looting and rioting in the city? Does that represent the population of the city?
No, it doesn't. But my question to you is, when we were out here protesting all last week for 6 days straight peacefully, there were no news cameras, there were no helicopters, there was no riot gear, and nobody heard us. So now that we burned down buildings and set businesses on fire and looted buildings, now all of a sudden everybody wants to hear us. Why does it take a catastrophe like this in order for America to hear our cry? I mean, enough is enough. We've had too many lives lost at the hands of police officers. Enough is enough.
Yeah, that point was pretty devastating. What she's saying is we either get no coverage when we protest peacefully, or we get negative coverage if people start to say, fuck this, and they burn down buildings, and they burn cars, and they throw rocks at police officers, and do all this fucked up criminal activity. So it's a lose-lose. You peacefully protest, fucking crickets, no national media shows up, the Freddie Gray situation comes and goes without anything getting addressed, or you really act out and you get media attention, but it's mostly negative, and they muddy the waters and they never focus on what led to that situation, Freddie Gray's murder. They just talk about, oh, look at these criminal, animal black people. You know how they are. Look at how they're acting. So, yeah, that's such a fucking good point that it stopped me in my tracks earlier when I was listening to it. I was like, God damn it, that's brilliant and it's spot on. And you know what it got me thinking of? I remember when the situation was unfolding in Ferguson. I remember tweeting about it, and Steve-O, who's the CFO of the Young Turks, tweeted back to me, because I think everybody who listened to the show knows that in the whole, like, Malcolm X versus MLK approach to civil disobedience debate, I'm on Team MLK on that issue. And so I was tweeting my usual non-violence messages and how, you know, you can't defeat violence with violence and stuff like that. And Steve-O basically fired back and said, and he didn't say, no, actually, Malcolm X was right, and it's by any means necessary, Malcolm X's famous quote. He basically said, you actually need both. And that's a really, really interesting point. Because it's true that, take in South Africa, for example, when people were rioting and looting and really fucking shit up, you made it so that Nelson Mandela, the peacemaker, could go up to the white racist apartheid establishment, the white politicians, and say, hey, buddy, you could either deal with them or you could deal with me. And then you put them in a corner where they said, let's deal with you right now. We'll deal with you. We'll deal with you. And then they got their rights that way. Same thing with MLK. In fact, you could see it in some of his writings where he makes the same argument. He's like, look, man, either you can deal with me or Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and those Nation of Islam people are right behind me and they got pitchforks. So who do you want to deal with? And, you know, the more I think about it, the more I realize that's absolutely true. But the thing that I essentially can't get over is that I actually do believe to my core that you become the devil you're trying to avoid when you start to do the violence and you start to do the criminal activity. And I don't believe in the idea that any press is good press. I think if the entire national media is only focusing on your rioting and ignoring what led to the riot, they are changing the national view of the people who are fighting against the injustice of what happened to Freddie Gray. I think that you get so much negative coverage from the media, and they focus so much on the riots themselves and the looting and the fires and all that stuff, that we lose sight of the original thing that we were focusing on. So in other words, I think that a violent approach, it just doesn't work. I think it's counterproductive. I think it pushes us further down the wrong road. But I can certainly say at this point that I'm at least open to the idea that, in all seriousness, you probably need a little bit of both in order to really enact change. Because if 100% of people are totally peaceful, which is, again, the approach I prefer, but are you going to be in a situation where there's no coverage from the national media and nobody gives a fuck to change anything? Maybe. I mean, I'm a little bit optimistic on that point, maybe naively so, where I think if there's the right number of people and the right leadership, that you actually can get change through a purely peaceful route. But believe me, I do understand now, and I think it's a great point to bring up, that when making changes to a society, when trying to push a society in the proper direction and get substantive reform, at times you need a little bit of Malcolm X and you need a little bit of MLK.